Wash your ballad, hope for the best.
Last night I was sending an email to him and said, well, you're obsessed with the Hitler or something. And he said, oh, guilty as charged or something like that. Yeah. But nevertheless, for instance, I had another writer from the paper last week here, Lawrence McCurry, and I wrote for that paper. I am being labeled Nazi. I never even mentioned the name of a Hitler.
No. Well, maybe I'm lucky. My 2 submissions have not been accepted, so they can't list among my many sins that I wrote for your work. I wrote on my trip to South Africa.
Can you imagine if hell and heaven was in the hand of the man? If there is.
Do you remember this, John?
Oh.
You guys ready?
Oh shit. Okay, it's your new toy. Okay.
My new toy.
Okay, go ahead. You just count. Are the microphones okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Everything's tested.
Okay.
5, 4, 3.
Good afternoon. My name is Bahman Yazdanfar, and this is Voters Echo, a weekly program brought to you to discuss different issues concerned to Torontonian, Ontarian, Canadians as a whole, and regarding to the economy and political situation and social issues as well. Last week I had the gentle guest who was talking about the free speech, and we are going to continue that discussion today with our one of our returning guests. But before that, I have to disclose a couple things. I am neither member nor sympathizer of any mainstream political party in provincially or federally. I do not endorse or reject any opinion of my guests. I may or may not agree with part or all of the issues that is being discussed in the show. It is your responsibility that after 1 hour sitting with us and observing what is being discussed, use your own judgment for next time around when there is an election. Make your choice wisely, or with more information rather. I am not getting paid for this program. The airtime for the program, however, has been donated by Dr. James Sears as part of his credit with that channel's studio, which I appreciate him in advance. Since I do not make any money, I appreciate if anyone can help me either in the form of human resources or monetary. I haven't received any in last year or so, but if you are seeing this program worthy of that contribution, drop a line or two at our website, www.votersecho.com, and I will be more than happy to respond to you and communicate with you. Now, without further ado, let's go to our returning guest, Paul Fromm. Thank you, Paul, for accepting my invitation. And I know that you were probably your jet lag because you just arrived late last night. Is that correct?
Well, I do a lot of traveling, so I'm not really jet lagged. But
Okay.
yes, it's
So you are used
It's
to-
great that you made it an afternoon
So
show
you
rather
got
than
your-
6
your-
a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. For our audience who are not familiar with you and what you do and why you are here, would you please just give us a snapshot of your background with your full name and what you have done for a few minutes so people know who they are listening to and why should they listen to it for that
Right.
matter?
Well, my name is Paul Fromm. I'm formerly an English instructor for 25 years in the province of Ontario, and for the last 20 years I've been the director of the Canadian Association for Free Expression. And as the name suggests, we try to maximize the promise of freedom of expression that is in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's largely a phony charter. It's been seriously undermined, but nonetheless, freedom of expression is absolutely vital to responsible self-government, or in more normal terms, democracy. You can't really have a participatory democracy if you don't have freedom of speech. If people can't discuss issues, if people can't disagree with each other, debate, it undermines the democratic process completely. And I would like to be really positive and say things are getting better and better. Regrettably, though, in the 30-some years since we've had Trudeau's charter, freedom of speech has been progressively restricted and eroded. We've had a few victories, but we're also dealing with a mindset in much of our society where people, I don't think any longer really respect freedom of speech. I don't mean people in general, but there's a significant minority of people who simply don't respect it. And they take a pretty totalitarian, politically correct view that there's only one opinion, theirs, and if you open your mouth, and disagree, you must be silenced.
Let me ask you, you just read my mind because I was thinking after you started introducing yourself, the first question was, I'm here 30 years in Canada, over 30 years. And I came here with the notion of the democracy because I came from a country that we didn't have it. But over the last 30 years, at least it is my experience, maybe I am dreaming, maybe I am hallucinating, I don't know, maybe it is a nightmare for me. But day by day, the condition of individual as an entity, individual entity, to exercise his or her rights, at least to me, is being diminished drastically. Am I wrong?
No, Bauman, I see exactly the same thing. I'm going to tell you, if I may, a couple of stories, but
sure. It is your hour.
but it's not just government.
I didn't mention that. I didn't specifically say government. What I'm saying is even on the society, because you said minority, in that part I think is majority.
Oh, okay. I guess in my own mind, what we have normally been fighting would be legal restrictions on free speech.
Okay.
But I'll tell you a story, and it shows the mindset. I don't like bullies of any sort.
Who do you like? Who likes that?
Oh, I don't know. Corporations are just the meanest, nastiest bullies, despite all their feel-good advertising. So I was at the Avis automobile pickup counter at the Vancouver International Airport a little while ago, and they tell me, we can't. Your credit card doesn't work. I said, well, how much were you trying to authorize? $350. I said, but I'm only renting it for one day, and the rental is $70. Oh, you have to. I said, why? Oh, well, I said, are all your customers crooks? All your customers crooks. I mean, what
was the reasoning for 300?
Oh, it's policy. It's policy.
Who made that policy?
Oh, who knows? Somebody way up there.
Bully.
And you know, it's a scamorama. They will freeze $350 on your credit card. So so I asked, well, my bill will be 70 something. When will I get the remaining 280 back? Oh, as soon as the you bring the car back. And I said, are you sure? Well, it's up to the banks. I said, I happen to know it won't be back to my credit for maybe 4 or 5 days. Now, who has control of that money? And why should you have it? Oh, well, you know, we're trusting you with a $30,000 car.
You have insurance.
I said, you don't give me that. You've got insurance. So things go from bad to worse. So I now have to sign. Well, what's this for? $250 extra charge if you smoke. I said, what's that for? Well, some people don't like smoking. I said, well, some people do.
Okay.
And are you telling me it costs $250 to clean the car up, a little bit of air freshener and a wipe down? Well, I said, okay, now I get it. You hate smokers, right? Is there anybody else you hate? Like,
oh, you asked them?
yeah, like, do you hate
Whites.
and maybe black people? And I'm talking to an East Indian, and he doesn't know what to say. So maybe do you hate Catholics or Buddhists? And they don't know what to do. So finally he says, you called me a racist. I said, I didn't call you anything. I just
asked you a question.
I said, I'm making a complaint against you. I'm making a complaint against you too. And I thought, public relations just stinks. Why don't they? I mean,
One would wonder who trains these people.
yeah, why wouldn't they just say, well, I'm sorry, it's policy, but we'll knock $10 off your bill. I mean, but nowadays, you're in Canada because the customer is always wrong. And the minute you speak up, in fact, I had a more or less the same incident at a different airport. The woman was telling me, well, if you don't want to rent a car from us, you can rent from an enterprise, next door. And they put $1,000 charge on your card.
Why, it's a conspiracy among
And I thought, in fact, I said to her, what sort of employee are you that you would actually try to shove the business?
Customer to the
and
side
I'm
of
actually a preferred customer. I'm an important dude. $1.60, and my Avis preferred card gets me a coffee at Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all BS.
Not even that.
It's BS. It's all BS. But so I thought, this is crazy. I mean, they're so arrogant. They don't, if I'd said, well, okay, I'm going to Enterprise, I don't think she cared. Actually, as a matter of fact, after I got my keys, I did go next door to the Enterprise guy, and I said, if I wanted to rent a car from you, how much would you charge against my credit card? He said $200. Now, Avis had just told me $1,000.
Well, you see, that is a good couple of the anecdotes because people, generally speaking, day to day, confront with this kind of situation, and they brush it off.
Yes.
And it accumulates over a period of time, and one day you open your eyes, you see it become unwritten policy in the society that you and I shall not talk against this or against that or against anything for that matter unless they tell you what you are allowed to talk about.
Leaving aside obvious freedom of speech issues, this is what worries me, that it's seeped right throughout society, that basically you shut up. I mean, if you disagree with something, keep it to yourself. Now, I happen to think, I'm not a smoker, so I don't have a dog in this race, but it does bother me to see the way people are bullied. And when I spoke up about it, and you tried to draw out the logic of it, okay, you persecute smokers, well, would you persecute other groups? These people don't know how to handle it, and the only answer is you shut up, I see that a lot from corporations, and that's very dangerous for society.
As you know, J. Paul, I am not for any political parties. I am not right, left, center. I am my own man. I go issue. I make my own judgment or opinion based on issue by issue. My issue maybe is congruent with the rights with one area or left in area or center, whatever. I don't label myself. However, having said that, my experience in the last at least 6-7 years that actively been involved with the politics, either as a candidate or as a party leader or as a journalist, being that far left or even just moderate left always try to shut you up, stifle you, as soon as you provide an opinion. And I'm talking about opinion. For instance, if I'm going to a movie with someone, let's say with you, we are going to a movie, and in that movie one scene come, and I come out and I tell you something that is not tasteful in your mind, and you are a little bit of the liberal or the NDP or left, you start trying to just put me in the jail or send me to Guantanamo. Why? Because I express my opinion. Why is it not on the right that much? As much as the saturated in the left, on the left?
No, that's a good question. I think part of it is that there is an incredible moral self-righteousness on the left. That the views we hold, like radical egalitarianism or environmentalism or radical feminism or whatever, we are morally right. So if you disagree, it means one of two things. Either you're mentally defective, or you're evil. And we've seen this in the commentary
From their point of view.
From their point of view,
Yeah.
We've seen this in the press commentary on the, or much of the press commentary on the vote last Thursday, where a majority in Britain voted to pull
Yes,
out, out of the European Union, and it's been repeatedly pointed out that the people who voted that way were overwhelmingly older, white, didn't have a university education. In other words, they're stupid. I mean, that's the implication. As a matter of fact, many people with a university education voted to leave as well. But it might be true that perhaps people older, people who perhaps had never had the opportunity to go to university, tended to be more conservative, more nationalistic, and voted
Because
that
they
way.
saw war.
Yeah, but the implication though was they're stupid. You see, so you couldn't.
The narrative was they are stupid.
Yes, that's the narrative, and of course it's been pointed out endlessly that many of Donald Trump's supporters do not have a college degree. Well, I've known many people with a college degree who are absolutely ill-informed, narrow-minded, and stupid. A university education has not broadened their minds or made them better people. It's simply indoctrinated them as useful idiots for the New World Order.
Well, there is as I was briefly talking to you before the show, there is a big difference between the schooling and education.
Yes.
The schooling, you can go and get your degree and come out. It doesn't mean that you're educated. It doesn't mean that if you have a dogma that is attached to you since you were 1 year old, and it's grow over the 20 years of your life, and now you're going to a school, you are not just shedding off your dogma and say, oh, I am getting, and I start refill myself with a new education. Do we?
Well, I hate to sound like longing for the past. Oh, when I was a boy, but I had the benefit.
They don't buy it anyway.
I had the benefit of a fairly liberal education, where we were taught. I went to a private high school and the St. Michael's College at the University of Toronto, but we were not indoctrinated. We were taught. We were challenged to think, and we were taught that you can take whatever opinion or point of view you want, but you have to be able to back it up or argue for it, rather than just stamp your foot and say, I'm right. Well, I think this because I think this. That's not good enough. I don't want to totally generalize, but many universities today are simply, at least in the social sciences, are simply indoctrination mills for cultural Marxism. And they're turning out a very, very intolerant group of people. I've just come from Victoria, British Columbia, and the University of Victoria banned the student right to life or anti-abortion group.
Right to life.
Banned them. They're not allowed there, and they're not accredited.
Sorry, they banned the people who are pro-abortion or pro-life.
Pro-life or anti-abortion.
Okay.
Ban their club, so
Okay.
they're not allowed. They're not allowed to have the club.
And who makes that decision? Who makes that call?
The university administration.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry,
no,
and
no.
it went to court, and the courts upheld it. They said, well, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms doesn't apply. The university is a private institution, despite the fact it gets dollops of government money.
Why Charter of Rights is not apply? Then why people going to apply for a job in the companies? They go to the Human Rights Tribunal and what is that? Make a claimant about the prejudice or being.
Well, that's different. That's not the Charter of Rights. That will be probably a provincial human rights law, which may say that businesses may not discriminate on certain grounds.
That brought us that very good point. We are living under one flag of the Canada.
Yes.
There is a Canada, there is 10 provinces, 3 territories. Although each one of them has their own rules and laws and regulation, however, the Charter of Rights, 1982, was designed for all Canadians.
That's right.
Then why, what is the point of even paying to these people to go and spend our taxpayers' money to come up with a piece of document that is worthless?
Well, that's a good point, and I would argue that the charter has been a bitter disappointment because what Trudeau managed to do was
We are talking about Pierre Trudeau.
Pierre Trudeau, yeah, Trudeau Senior. He was able to sell this to people on the basis that it was going to secure or give them rights. This was a big con job. Under English common law, we have the right to do anything we want, except what is specifically forbidden by law. The charter brought in European law, whereby you don't have rights, but you have rights that are given to you by the government or doled out to you. Now, the charter rights are largely a con job. Section 2A says you have rights to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, all these good, freedom of belief, freedom of religion, all these
Part
good
1,
things.
Section 2, yeah.
But Section 1 says you have all the rights in Section 2, subject only to such limits as are demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. And that has made dozens of lawyers millionaires in the intervening 34 years. What does it mean? Well, what the Supreme Court says it means is this. Governments can restrict your rights. The restrictions wouldn't be justified in a free society, but in a democratic society. So as long as a legislature or the Parliament of Canada votes to and restricts your rights, and provided it's for a good reason, purpose, and provided they don't go too far, the restrictions are okay. So in other words, you really don't have those freedoms.
So it is subjective to the individual's opinion.
Very subjective.
So if someone from Liberal Party or Conservative Party or NDP is in charge, he or she can make a judgment using this clause, I mean the Section 1, and justify it for him or herself, and therefore
Restrict your rights.
restrict your rights.
Let me give you, this is another personal example, but if we were a better functioning society, one of the really wonderful things for any group that has a point of view that they'd like to get across to the parliamentary press people is a service provided by the Parliamentary Press Gallery. And the Parliamentary Press Gallery is the umbrella group of all the newspaper, magazine, radio, TV reporters that cover Parliament. I think there are about 130, 140 of them. And so what the Parliamentary Press Gallery does is that if your group wants to have a press conference, they will give you a time slot. And I've done this, I think, about 6 times in the last decade or so. And at the time slot, they'll set you up in what's called the Charles Lynch Room.
Okay.
And that's in the Parliament buildings.
In Ottawa.
In Ottawa.
Yeah.
And there's they do a video of your press conference. They have facilities for video cameras, still shots, reporters to write, and they've got a nice background. And you've probably seen it before, where they've got the flags of all the provinces and a black matte background. It really photographs very well.
When the minister they want to announcement, they come and sit in that desk, and people, journalists ask questions. Kind of.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
and so at no cost, you have access to all the reporters that are covering Parliament, and they'll. So if you're going to have a press conference and they give you the 1:30 slot, they will tell all the reporters this person with this issue is going to have a press conference, and it's very convenient for them, for the reporters, because it's right in there, practically in their own building. So it's a great service, great opportunity, and it's free of charge. So I've used it a number of times. And so on the 18th of May,
Just this past month.
Yes, a little over a month ago, Justin Trudeau was going to be delivering an apology in the House of Commons to the Sikhs for the Komagata Maru incident in 1914.
It's a long time ago. It's like over 100 years ago.
Yeah, 102 years ago. And I thought, and had long thought, this was wrong. It's a completely bogus thing. The government was right in 1914 to send the ship packing because it was being organized by radical Sikhs. The goal had been to try to increase the Sikh population, and particularly the members of a radical group called the Gadar, or Mutiny Party. They were active on the west coast of Canada and the United States and in British India. Of the 376 people on board the ship, 20 were allowed to stay because they had legitimate business in Canada, but the rest were sent packing. So, it's a long story, and I don't want to really get into it here, but there was never any reason for an apology. And furthermore, I don't think the government today can apologize for something another government did 100 years ago. I mean, for an apology to have any moral merit, it has to be something you did. I mean, you can't apologize to me because somebody else in this building,
Our producer did something.
lit up a cigarette. I mean, you can't apologize.
I apologize for our producer using the what was
the foghorn.
that big.
I mean, I'm not.
And it is present. It's not 100 years ago.
No, I'm not a moral anarchist, but I see Canadian governments, both liberal and conservative, the last while, pretty much like a dockside whore. I mean, they're always on their knees apologizing.
Before we get to that press gallery, I just want to just a quick interruption. What is the purpose of this apology anyhow? Let's say I have seen it, they did it with the Japanese. Okay, I understand the Japanese went to the camp, but it was again that time. I'm not condoning that behavior. What I'm saying is, why at one moment the parliament gets up and sits together, go to the caucus and say, okay, we resolve all of the present problem in our nation. The only thing left to apologize from this or that or this. What does that signify? I don't understand. What is that apology really means in a sense of the tangible way for those victims?
Well, there isn't a person alive today who was on the Komagata Maru. That was 102 years ago. So, no, the apology perhaps cozies up to one ethnic group or another. The government tries to win favor that way at our expense. I mean, why should my government apologize to make a group feel better because of something that happened over 100
Do they
years
pay some money after apology to those?
Most apologies involve that. Harper apologized to the Sikhs, but not in Parliament, and gave them about $2.5 million to build a monument to the Komagata Maru. Well, why don't they build their own monument?
So real winner was in that particular case is the developer.
Yes, and the real losers are the Canadian taxpayer.
Okay,
But-
so go back to the gallery.
Well, anyway, so fine. So what I wanted to do was to have a press conference. So I called the Parliamentary Press Gallery about a week or two before, and I was able to book the Parliamentary Press Gallery for 1:30 the afternoon of May the 18th. So that's fine. That sounds good. So I was driving up to Ottawa, and as of about 10:30 that morning, I phoned when I was in Napanee, and I just wanted to be sure where I would go to pick up the passes, because a couple of people were going to join me, and things are very security conscious, so you have to get a pass. So they told me. So the point being that as of 10:30 that morning, everything was still okay. I got up to the Parliamentary Press Gallery, which is on the south side of Wellington Street, in their own. It's not a government building. And I went up to I think it's the 5th floor, and I said who I was. And I said, I'm here to pick up the passes. My press conference is in 10 minutes' time. And I was told, well, your press conference is canceled. I said, what do you mean? I didn't cancel it.
And they didn't inform you?
Oh, no. Well, you have to talk to, I think his name was Mr. McConnell. I said, well, who's he? Well, he's the Deputy Sergeant at Arms. Now that's an official of the House of Commons. So, all right, so I phoned him. Well, it's Ottawa, nobody's ever in. A few minutes later, though, I do get in touch with him, and I said, well, I have a press conference in about 1 minute. He says, well, I had to cancel it. I said, well, who are you to cancel it? Well, I'm in charge of security. I said, well...
What is it? Are you a security threat?
I said, well, that was my question. Why did you cancel it? Security concerns. I said, what do you mean security concerns? And he said, well, there will be some Sikhs on the second floor of the Parliament building celebrating the Prime Minister's announcement. Okay. And I would be on the first floor in the Charles Lynch Room for my half hour. I would go in, go out. So what do you mean security concerns? I mean, I said, you guys have the guns, you've got the training, you've got the manpower. I mean, I have no intention of getting
Was Justin Trudeau supposed to be in the room that you're supposed to go?
No. He would be up in the House of inside.
So you are just there with no dignitary.
No. At the press conference, there would be me, one or two of my associates, and whoever from the press was interested. And that's it. I would never see I would never see Trudeau. I would never see a member of Parliament. And the Sikhs, if they were there, would be up one floor above. I mean, there was never would the twain meet. But I was told, well, you can talk to so and so. She's a lawyer for the government. So, okay, I head back to Toronto, and on my way, I call the lawyer. But I mentioned it's Ottawa. Nobody's ever in. But I did reach her sometime later, and she said...
Who's lawyer?
She's
the lawyer of the government.
Lawyer for the government.
Okay.
And
which is taxpayers' money.
Which is taxpayers' money. I said, well, I don't understand what happened. And she said, well, it was the deputy sergeant at arms had some security concerns. I said, yeah, but what were they? Oh, well, you'd have to talk to him.
So they are passing back and forth.
Yeah, I said I did talk to him, and all I'm told is security concerns, which and often security is just BS to restrict.
Oh yes, they can put national security, whatever they can shove it under the one term, anything they want to do.
But anyway, we got the truth a couple of days later. Probably
you found out?
Yes, probably your best friend in the world, Warren Kinsella, has a blog.
Oh, my friend.
And in his blog, he said, well, it had been a pretty bad week because the very day I was up in Ottawa was the day the Prime Minister lost it. Remember, he grabbed the Conservative House leader by the arm and he elbowed an NDP woman in the MP in the chest. And he had to apologize. But he said, well, it's a pretty bad week. But one good thing happened, he said. Kudos to the Prime Minister's office and the Department of Justice. When they found out that Paul Fromm was going to have a press conference, they canceled him right away so he could not spew his venom. I thought.
Oh, he wrote after the...
Yes, he wrote that.
So that means he was behind that.
Well, I'm not saying he's behind it.
I mean...
But he knows.
He knew what was going on.
And so it wasn't security concerns. It was political. The Prime Minister didn't want any chance of anybody disagreeing.
Let me ask you something. If you were in that press gallery, what would you, let's say if it was not security and you got your pass, what would you have done over there in that half an hour or so that you had?
Well, I would have, normally what you do is you make whatever statement you have to make in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then the press get to ask you questions.
Okay, it's like I'm coming to go to a meeting, doing a little bit of speech, and then people ask me a question.
And
it has nothing to do with a member of parliament.
No.
It has nothing to do with it. You just giving your opinion in the area that is designated by government itself.
Yes.
For this purpose.
That's right. And whoever from the press is interested comes and listens to you and maybe reports on, maybe doesn't. That's the chance you take. But at least you have access to them. I would not be meeting with any member of Parliament. I would not be meeting with. It would have nothing to do with whoever else might be visiting there. I would go into a room on the first floor of the Parliament buildings. I do my thing and I leave.
Let me ask you this question. You have been in this gig for, you said, over 20 years.
Yes.
You have your ups and downs. You have had your resistance and all sort of name callings. Let me ask you a little bit more not philosophical, more general question. A government who has a majority, like our government, Liberal government in Ottawa, who brags that we got that because people chose us.
Yes.
Whatever that means. why a mighty government who has access to all of these resources are afraid of opinion of a man like you in the press gallery that may or may not be viewed, let's say by 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 people?
Well, that's a good question. Well, there was so many voices in our society, so much information and so on. I would think that a smart government would simply say, well, look, he's entitled to his views. A few people will hear him. A few will agree. Some will disagree. Whatever. But the prime minister, I mean, he will head off the news. He will be the main focus of attention, as his right. What would they have to fear? But what I think it is this moral righteousness. If there was any press coverage that said, well, the prime minister made his his apology today in the House of Commons, but there were some dissenting voices, and then show 30 seconds of something I had to say, it would for fair-minded people that would be okay. They would say, okay, well, the prime minister takes this view, this other fellow takes that view, but in the self-righteous world of the politically correct, that there are not two opinions. There's only one. That's the prime minister is right, and anybody who disagrees is wrong. And as Kinsella, so nastily put it, spew his venom. He had no idea what I was going to say. I didn't get a chance to say it.
And not to mention, it is just opinion of one person.
Yes. This is why the theme, or at least the title of my talk that I've been giving in Western Canada, I call Canada a soft tyranny. We are a tyranny. There was no opposition. The opposition parties did not do what they should do, which would be to give reasons against it, because, well, the Conservatives were compromised. Harper already gave a complaint. The NDP has never met a minority they don't like. The Greens are largely irrelevant. The Bloc Québécois thinks only of Quebec. And yet a very substantial number of Canadians don't agree with this apology business.
No, or any other policies. I am just what you just said. I mean, years ago I wrote in one of my articles that there is no difference between these three mainstream parties, provincially or federally, NDP, Conservative and Liberal mainly. They are just like I put this analogy, I said it's like a three-horse attached to a carriage with a different color of the horse, but the only same person rides the horse. And even if you know who rides the horse, you don't know who is sitting in the cabin and enjoy the ride. The point is what you just said, even in the previous administration, was the same thing. It was not like a right-wing administration really let people talk that much, neither.
No, and that's why I was going to somewhat disagree with you about the about who is the most opposed to free speech. Well, I guess I would agree with you. It's the left, but certainly Harper was no great example of cherishing free speech. I mean, he ruled his party like a dictator. Members of Parliament were often not allowed even to raise certain issues. He was a control freak, and freedom of speech did not prevail in Ottawa. There were a couple of things his government did that I would agree were right, but the intolerance to free speech and to free discussion is unfortunately is right across the political spectrum.
I just to clarify, when I say left, I did not mean the government. I mean left-minded individual in the society.
Yes.
And a good example, for instance, this coming weekend we have gay parade, and then we have anti-gay parade in north of the city. We have pro-Iranian. I read in the paper. I don't deal with my community or anything, but when you look at that, all of these provided or accommodated somehow by the city and by the taxpayers' money. but what you see, the narrative always is toward the left.
Yes.
Either from an ethnic group, like you mentioned about Sikhs community in the West, or it could be gay pride, or it could be Brampton, which is mostly South Asian people. Always they ghettoize them in that area, and usually there is money involved.
I think that's right. And there's also quite often a phony narrative of these groups are vulnerable groups or victim groups. Well, this business about the Komagata Maru, the Sikh radicals started to raise this issue about 25, 30 years ago. But in my opinion, the proof of the pudding is that since the Komagata Maru, tens of thousands of Sikhs have come to Canada. Canada, this was not a blight on Canada's history, a terrible, dark incident in the past. Canada clearly remains a welcoming port for Sikhs. In fact, Canada has the second largest Sikh population outside of India. So far from being a dark stain in our history, I'm sure the vast majority of Sikhs didn't give a flying flip about ancient history.
It was 100 years
They
ago.
were, they were quite happy to take the benefits.
There must be some sort of the profiteers in the whole process.
Well, it gives certain of their. Oh yes, and furthermore, Sikhs constitute about 0.59, a little over 1/2% of Canada's population. There are 4 Sikh ministers in the federal cabinet, so they've got 13.5% of the federal cabinet. Their population is less than 1/2.
And the prime minister, one of his first agenda was commit government of Canada for over $2 billion in India.
Yes, we need more people to say, leave that victimhood stuff.
Focus on what we have, what the problem we have. We haven't touched that. Now, coming back to the right of the expression, or free. I personally believe a man was born free and dies free and should not be capitulating any time between these two pivotal points of the life and death to any form of ideology imposed on him or her. So, but apparently our history shows in the last 3,000 years that always a small group of the people come and try to tell others what to say or what to do and so on, either in form of tyranny or democracy as we see it here. Now, all of these behavior of the government that we have in regards to stifling individuals, to not what to say or what not to say, or politically correct. You should not talk about gays or Muslims or Jews or Christians or whatever they are talking about. What is the end game for that? What is the end game? I mean, because there is no specific direction. I mean, if you go to Muslim country, they say we are Muslim, and that is their direction. So everything else is off. If you go to a Christian country, if you go to Vatican, they say we are Christian, so everything is off. But here we have wishy-washy. Everything is mixed. What is the end game here?
Well, the end game will be the destruction of us as a society. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, says that Canada is the first post-national state. He says, well, we don't really have a culture. This is appalling. We are fundamentally a European country. The Europeans founded and built this country. Yes, other people came along as well, but what made this country great are our language, our laws, our political institutions.
And you're talking about common law, not the...
Most of
most of that.
Most of which work much of the time is European. We do have a culture. Whereas people like first of all, deny that we have that, and everything is up for grabs. And part of our culture has been an attachment to the family, the recognition, and that's not exclusive to European people. I think others recognize that as well. But the importance of the family unit, I think, is extremely vital to a society, and the homosexual agenda, I think, is contrary to that. I think the same-sex marriage, and now the Conservatives apparently, at least politically, are going along with that. I think it's a terrible mistake. It doesn't mean that two homosexuals or lesbians can't have an arrangement to live together or to divvy up tasks or be exclusive to each other. That's entirely possible, but it's not a marriage. And I think our society's gone off the rails, and now the latest with the transgender. Trudeau's going to bring in more repressive legislation where.
Yes, one of them said you cannot even talk about them.
Well,
I'm just exaggerating, but it was.
But people will quickly pick up because most people are not lawyers, or although I'm not a lawyer, I've certainly learned a fair deal about the law. Once you add them as a privileged group under the so-called hate law, it makes discussing them critically difficult. You must be very careful. Now, why must we have a society like that where we must be very careful? We can't say this, we can't say that. And I've noticed that.
That is my point. Because if you have to have a Rolodex of all of these privileged groups, because it's not one.
Oh no, it's a complete Rolodex of the privileged, and that was what Trudeau Sr. managed to do. He managed to replace individual rights with group rights. Like if you're a member of a privileged group, you've got rights, and your rights as a group must be considered. For instance, in development issues, or especially with the pipelines that are so vital to Canada. Indians have near veto of.
You're talking about Aboriginal.
Aboriginals,
yeah.
or what? I mean.
No, because you were talking about Sikh. I just
Okay, yes. Aboriginals have near veto power over pipelines on the basis that this was their ancestral land, and it's so wacky as our Supreme Court that they don't. There doesn't have to be written records. We can rely on oral tradition. Well, one of the reasons for that is that
your fault?
Up until the coming of the Europeans, they didn't have any written language. So, and in many cases, tribes have only been on their particular chunk of land for a couple hundred years. So it's not the kind of romantic idea that since time immemorial. The tribes moved around.
Well, there are always an argument on both sides because they could claim, okay, up until 400 or 500, the few hundred that you mentioned, that Europeans were not here, and then when they came and occupied. But I don't want to derail the conversation about India.
Yes.
But what you said was brought me just triggered a couple of the very important questions, because if we have to always get up in the morning and as part of our jacket and the pen and the paper and the wallet, put a Rolodex of all of these groups in our hand. So as soon as I reach the Aboriginal, I have to say this. As soon as I reach the homosexuals, I have to say this. If I meet a Muslim, I have to say this. If I say this. First of all, not only life loses its own value in general, but I want to ask you this, to get your opinion about that. Doesn't this contradict the whole premise of the diverse society and integration of the multiculturalism?
Yes, because and I've warned about this. I mean, I'm a critic of multiculturalism. I won't make any bones about it. But I saw multiculturalism 30 years ago as eventually involving a massive loss of rights. The only way you can manage a diverse society is by repression. You simply have to shut people up. That's what's happened in the old, totally illogical.
So just zombies
Yugoslavia.
off the street, nobody talks to this, which brings back to your earlier comment about the dismantling the union of the families and make the individuals just stay in their own lives without talking with anybody except a few friends.
And a silenced society is not a creative society.
Of course not.
You know, I mean, if you realize no matter what I believe, I can't say this and I can't say that and I mustn't say this and I mustn't say that. I think eventually people become stupid. We get creativity both scientifically and artistically from people whose minds are free, who debate, who have an idea, maybe they talk about it, maybe it gets challenged by somebody, maybe they stick to the idea, or maybe the challenge gets them to see things a different way. That's a vibrant society. I see us being beaten down into conformity and eventually into stupidity, which won't be good. I mean, technologically, we've got to hustle.
And not to mention, if you don't open your mouth, and if you have nefarious ideas, I would never know what you end up doing.
No, and this will come back.
I mean, it's like bombs. It's like a quiet bombs are going around the society, and one day one of them explodes.
Well, the U.S. chattering classes are unable to understand the Trump phenomenon, and just by if anybody is interested in the ongoing discussion of Donald Trump, you can check out the Trump phenomenon. Yeah. That's the name of the program. It's every weeknight at 9 o'clock on rbn.org. That's
every night.
Every weeknight. It's republicbroadcasting.org. I'm a co-host a couple of nights a week, and it's just a discussion. We take phone calls and so on. But what the chattering classes in the United States missed out on was that there was widespread, largely unarticulated, because it's politically incorrect to say this, anger.
That is just coming up to the surface.
Anger on a number of fronts, but one of them was the economic devastation to American industries caused by particularly trade with China, but the abandonment of tariffs or so-called free trade has had an incalculable damage on whole communities. Another thing, which of course is very politically incorrect and not spoken about in respectable circles, is the massive population change brought on by wholesale third world immigration. The United States demographics have radically changed. In 1961, when
here even I saw this change.
Here the same, and outside of very, very small circles, it's never discussed. Even though in both countries the demographers have told us, and nobody challenges these predictions, that by 2050 Canada will be a majority non-white. The United States will be about 2040, 2041 majority non-white. And people see these changes, and yet they were never asked.
It's like elephant in the room. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, they were never asked. If you open your mouth, well, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe, and so on. There are other issues, but these have been ones that are largely not talked about, or anybody that mentions them is simply, denounced and silenced. That's coming back. I mean, that is part of the reason for the tremendous support for Trump, and to a lesser extent the support for Bernie Sanders. 22%
because
of
Bernie
whose,
Sanders was in the part of the organized system for the last 30 years. Even though he's saying the things that people like to hear, or he's outsider, so they speak to some extent, but nevertheless, he was being fed by the system.
oh, absolutely. Now, suggest that that is a good deal of the reason why so much of the chattering classes got it wrong on this Brexit vote. They were absolutely confident that Britain would remain in.
Oh, that is beginning of the larger conflict for next coming 2 or 3 years. Those who lost, we have to understand, EU lost about close to $30 billion a year of the gross revenue, close to $20 billion a year net. They are not sitting quietly. And when you mention about that assassination and all of that, I think this kind of thing is going to escalate for the next 2 years or 3 years. Let me, since Chris, how long? 4 or 5 minutes we have. Let me bring you that as a conclusion. I want to ask you, because I like to see someone, because sometimes when I think loud, people say you're crazy. It is, we know that. but if our governments, whether it's in Canada or anywhere else in Europe, or because this phenomena is global, it's just in some countries more than others, but it's global. If they are constantly trying to get wise and divide to so-called conquer the whole community, do you see any transition in the mankind to go back to the tribal system by segregating? Let's say, now that Britain went, maybe France goes, Netherlands goes, then Italy goes, and all of that, they go back to their roots, they become what they were. Let's say in Canada, maybe provinces start to say, okay, we want to have our own entity. Do you think, are we as a whole, collectively as a humankind, are we going back to the tribal system?
I think there's a strong attraction for more nationalism and for more tribal identity, and I don't think that's necessarily bad. Nationalism doesn't.
No, I didn't say it's bad. I mean, do you think that this movement could cause to get to that point?
I think so. There are strong regional separatist movements in other parts of Europe, in Catalonia, in Spain, in the Basque Country, in Spain, and the south of France. There's a sense that I think that we're being homogenized, partly because of technology and so on, but and there's I think a longing for a sense of community, and I think that's part of what was behind the Brexit vote. But there was another thing. It comes back to my abhorrence of bullying. One of the irritants in Britain was that the unelected bureaucrats in Brussels were regulated everything from the size of packaging to the
who you can trade with or who you cannot trade with, and where to go or where not to.
So that Britain really didn't, in many areas, didn't have national sovereignty anymore, and that's what people were. That's one of the things I think that led to the exit vote. And in Canada, we find bullying bureaucracies, and I think it's healthy that people fight back.
That part I agree with you. We are getting close to the end of the program. Just I leave you with this thought. Just a couple of nights ago, I was looking at the law enforcement agencies list across the globe. And it was very interesting. For instance, in the United States, we have about 200 of them. In Canada, we have about 55, 56 of them. In Britain, I think about 80, something like that. Generally about 1,100 or 1,200 law enforcement agencies. And I was thinking, just when you mentioned about is it good to fight back, probably all of these law enforcement agencies, because to prevent mankind to get to that basic line of the identity that they used to have.
Yes, I think that's true. And I encourage people to speak up. Things aren't turned around by one big event. History is changed by an accumulation of little acts. And one of the worst things I think that you can feel is that you are you
I'm
don't
one
count.
person. I can do nothing. Huh?
Yeah, you may be only one person, but you can do something. Do it.
Paul, as always, thank you very much for coming. It was very enlightening, and it was completely new stuff that we talked. They didn't have to even to go to somewhere else to repeat it. And you bring always the new stuff, and it's very refreshing. And I hope I have you back here some other time if something drastic happens, so you can provide your input from your perspective. Again, thank you for coming here.
Be glad to come back.
And ladies and gentlemen, that was our program for today, Monday, 27th of June 2016. As usually at the end of the program, I suggest or I encourage you to get involved, as even Paul said, get involved in your electoral process at least. Talk to your MPs, representatives, MPPs or councillors, help a candidate, volunteer, donate. And more importantly, the next time election comes along, roll up your sleeve and become a candidate yourselves. Good night.
So let the voters echo, let their voices be heard. Let us join together for a peaceful and better world, a place for everyone to have their say. Let the voters echo out today. Let the voters echo loud and free. So let the voters echo, let their voices be heard. Let us join together for a peaceful and better world, a place for everyone to have the say. Let the voters echo out today.